Mr. Donahue, I appreciate the work that's being done by you and all the organization, and the tough choices that have to be made, and the spirit of collaboration that everybody has to work on to try to find resolutions. And I find myself looking for the right ways to help support the post office in making their calculations and decisions. But I also live and work with my neighbors who work for the post office, and sometimes I get very frustrated with the process that we've gone through, and you and I have discussed some of this. But let me just say that it's very difficult as we're getting to the end of some of these issues, and I'm talking about the whole question of consolidation that has been pushed forward, and I've seen a process, and I'll walk through it. We began with the identification that there was going to be a consolidation that was going to be proposed, and they suggested that there was, a line of savings. And so right from the outset, the southeastern facility in my region was slated to be closed, and it projected a $16 million savings. We looked at the thing and realized that they didn't even calculate within the four corners of the letter correctly. And we asked for a recalculation of that. It went to, and a GAO study to confirm that it was being done appropriately. The GAO came back and said, well, based on the information that you had given to them, they could see how a decision could be made. They didn't weigh in, just that how a decision could be made, so to speak. Then we find that during this process that there's a second consolidation that's being considered, in which even though we've asked for a stay while this is being studied, that mail that was supposed to go to Philadelphia under the process that was being proposed to keep Philadelphia open was actually being diverted to Delaware. It was being diverted to Delaware because there was an overflow, and we really began to question the efficiency of that, finding that there's then a second study that's being done during the period of time that we all believe that the first consolidation is still being considered. Come back the second time and say, okay, they're actually going to consolidate everything down in Delaware now, which makes no sense to me, because I've got a big city between Delaware and Southeastern, and this has an impact not just on the Postal Service, but businesses that use the Postal Service and rely on it for its efficiency. So now we begin to see that there's a proposed savings of $13 million by closing down the Southeastern facility as part of Plan B, but we find that it's being consolidated and pushed even quicker. So the bottom line in the process is, how can I have confidence that the decisions and calculations that were made were accurate and correct and in the best interest of the Postal Service, and not due to some other kinds of issues which, quite frankly, I can't understand, because the logistics don't make sense to me, that you would close Southeastern and keep a Delaware and Philadelphia facility within a short distance of each other open at the same time, as well as one in New Jersey right across the river.
Let me comment on the, first of all, the history of Southeastern came about because of the overflow in Philadelphia. And as we built a new facility in Philadelphia in the mid-2000s, and right before the mail volume loss, we've lost 27% of our volume, and a substantial portion of that was what we would consider outgoing mail, which we processed in Southeastern. The idea was to originally move everything into from Southeastern into Philadelphia. As we looked, there were some opportunities to move the 193 zip code area down into Wilmington because of the geographical proximity. From what I know, all of Southeastern, with the exception of 193, is still going into Philadelphia. The Wilmington will get the far south 193 portion, and we'll split the mail up. We've already started that move. We've made these moves because financially we are in a desperate situation. We've been trying to keep our head above the water. We've got 8 days of cash on hand, and I know, it hurts when it happens to a local facility, but we've had to make these changes across the country. There will be no service degradation because Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Southeastern are all considered overnight service. That will not change. And we'll watch that like a hawk. You've got my commitment, but we've got to make these changes. We just have too much capacity. We've got to take the capacity out of the system. We can eliminate the building in Southeastern. We'll be able to find jobs, landing spots for the people. Most of them are within that area anyway, and we'll continue to make sure we provide great service.
Well, let me ask you about some of those employees right now. What kind of job security is there for those who are at Southeastern? Is there an assurance that they're going to continue to receive work within the area?
We have eliminated in the last 6 years 200,000 jobs. In the last 13 years, 314,000. We've never laid anybody off. Never. I have been fanatical about holding jobs, using overtime, non-career people. We always find a landing spot. Mr. Guffey and I work together to eliminate the need to access people for farther distance than 50 miles. That makes us even hold ourselves more to account to try to find landing spots. Because when you start moving people over the country, it's bad for them personally. Economically, it's a disaster. And so you've got my commitment that we will find landing spots for the people in Southeastern. We know that. I know that for a fact as I sit here.
All right. Well, thank you. Mr. Chairman, just one last question for Mr. Kudraki. The company prints all kinds of different mail, and in my region as well, including standard flats and magazines. And I have heard from some of those who do that in my area that aggressive postage rate increases for their mail can sometimes be devastating. Can you tell me from your experience what happened to your business with the postal rate increases once you began to have to deal, whether in the end it was really more cost effective, that you might lose more business by virtue of the rate increase? Tell me how you were impacted by that.
Well, 2007 would be the last example where it was the last time they could raise prices beyond the cap. And there were double-digit increases, to many of my clients, and we saw double-digit decreases in volume as people pulled back. And I was explaining before that a lot of it has to do with, there's different files that people mail to. One is a prospecting file where they're trying to get new customers, and that one is very delicate based on response rates. And so if you get a rapid spike in pricing on postage, you'll see them cut that way back, and we saw it. In fact, the whole industry saw it. We ended up consolidating a couple businesses that couldn't make it because of this, much larger than us. Some of them in your district were a part of that. And as a part of that, we closed over 21 plants to right-size the infrastructure. And it was tough. I mean, I know it's important to try and save jobs, but in the private sector, we had to release jobs. Very tough for us to do as a company, but to be sustainable, we made the tough decisions. Let's put this into perspective. Since 2001, postal rates went up 50%. Since 2001, print prices went down 33%. And we've had to make tough changes every part of our business to stay profitable, and we've been able to do that. And so, when you talk to the private sector and you're dealing with a declining situation, you have to get ahead of the curve. You have to make the tough decisions to do it. It's challenging, but it's real. Those price increases beyond a CPI have devastated this industry, and it will devastate it again if we let that happen.
Well, thank you for your...
I think the